Hi there and welcome in this post-build video. In this video I will go over all the details of how the build went, the things that went very smoothly, the things that went a little bit harder. This video will be somewhat of a nerdy video with lots of small, let's say, unimportant details that would only interest people that really want to build their own bike or that are into building bikes. I assume if you're interested in a bike build video that you might have watched the videos from Also Cycles. He actually filmed his build of his Yoeleo R9, and currently Cairo's house, he is making videos of his R9, so it's a different frame, and he's also using the i2, so that's slightly different, but both of them actually film or are filming the build. I didn't do that. I didn't want to be bothered with filming while I was building. I just wanted to enjoy it and just wanted to be able to concentrate on the build. So here is my post build report. So since there are so many small steps when building a bike, I will just go through the bike from the front to the back and see what comes up. So things that we hit at the front first are the tires. So everything went very smooth with the tires. These Vittoria Corsa tires go on very well. The latex tubes go on very well. And then I had to put on valve extenders for the latex tubes. And the only small mistake there is that I could have used shorter valve extenders for this depth of rim. So for a 5mm depth, just the minimal or the smallest valve extender of 2 centimeters would have been enough. So basically everything with the wheel was pretty okay. Then next thing, I guess, are the brakes. So the hydraulic system. So when installing all these Shimano parts, what I did was I simply looked up the Shimano dealer's guide. So they have their user guide, which basically says how to clean it and where to maybe put on a little bit of oil or grease. But they have their dealer's guide, which stipulates how to install them. And these guides are very good. You can compare them to IKEA guides. They really go step by step. They have all the torque recommendations, they have all the tools that you need, and basically it's the most efficient way to install their products. You can of course watch there's like tons of videos, some of them better than others, but you don't really have to if you use their dealer's guide. If you want to watch videos, I actually suggest you watch the videos of Free to Cycle, because he also does it using the methods from those dealer guides, and he has specific he uses like the Ultegra or the 105 or all the specific group sets. He goes over them. There's no need to watch let's say Park Tools or GCN videos or something at all actually. The brakes. So the hydraulic cables are already attached on the brake, which is, I guess, fine if you don't have a complex integrated steer tube to route the cables through. So of course I had to remove them and then sort of let the oil get out of them. But I did that sometime before the build already, since I knew I had to do that. And so I also had to get some new the olives and the pins and so on for that side, because they were also already installed and already pressed in by Shimano. I don't really know why they do it, because some of their customers then don't need to do it anymore, but then all the other customers need to buy new. It just seems like a bit stupid to already attach those things. So I already mentioned this, but guiding the cables through the handlebars was something I did yeah, first pretty much as I got the handlebars in, I wanted to try it, and it went easier than expected, so I did it right away. But I had to use the method that Steven from Oz Cycles demonstrated with a cable pulling the outers through. So the cable that I used are actually cheap brake or gear cables from bikes, just the cheap brand, and of course they have these stoppers that you can use to actually pull it. So All Cycles used some other cable and then made the stopper himself with some screws and so on. So here you don't need it, and it was cheaper than the options that he or in the hardware store that I got them. I could get these bike cables cheaper. But that worked quite well. So I had the handlebars, I had them cabled both with the hydraulic hoses and with the gearing outer cables, and the sort of the direction in which the cables go, or the order of the cables, so that they don't have to like cross or something, or definitely don't have to cross like somewhere here. It's quite important, and I followed Oz Cycles recommendation, where he switches the cable on the left side here. He switches the brake and gearing cable, but actually I found that it wasn't really necessary, because then the brake cable ends up being on the outside, I think, and the gearing cable needs to go into the tube towards the front derailleur, and the brake cable goes in the hole in the fork, but that hole is actually just right there, so then they kind of had to cross again here, so that wasn't really necessary. It's better if they just if they don't if they're not if they don't cross each other in the handlebars at all, but that's not a problem. So basically, installing the brakes themselves, the torque settings, and also the bleeding procedure is not very difficult. You just follow the dealer's guide step by step, and that's not hard. They also everything works, so that's fine. There was, however, a few other issues that I faced with the internal cabling, I guess. So, as I said, the hardest part was routing the cables through the handlebars, but routing the cables through the frame themselves, that's fine. But routing the cables through the frame as they are fixed to the handlebars, that becomes a little bit trickier, but still it's not impossible, and I used a cheap internal cabling set from AliExpress that I got with the system with the magnets and so on, so you can pull that through. That's fine. So that brings us to the headset and the whole headset system. Let's put it this way. There I might have gotten the biggest issue. So because the cables, I had routed the cables through the handlebars, that meant that I couldn't really try on the handlebars, because all the cables were sitting there without installing it fully. And I had so there were two bearings. So there was a bigger and a smaller bearing for the two bearings of the headset, the top bearing and the bottom bearing. And I noticed with the biggest bearing at the bottom that it was quite a large gap here, which wouldn't necessarily cause any issues, but I liked it better like this. And then with the biggest bearing at the top, there was also quite a gap between this, I guess, this cover plate, which sits underneath the spacers, and sort of covers, yeah, everything between the spacers and the frame. So there was a gap there, which you can't have. That should be quite close. So I put the smallest bearing here, and then I bought a smaller bearing for the bottom here. And that seemed to work quite well when I sort of put it together and tested it. But when the whole bike was cabled, yeah, I had the cables going through the whole bike, and I actually tightened the headset. I noticed that as I sort of tightened the headset, that this cover started touching the frame, which is of course yeah, bad, since then you can't turn the handlebars anymore. So it started touching or rubbing a bit. So I needed either to have a bigger bearing here, but only very slightly. So instead what I did was I bought spacers or shims. Well, I guess spacers are these things, so I guess shims, like small metal rings, and I have one left here. Small metal rings like this, very thin, that will sit in between where the top cap is pushing on the compression ring. So there's a ring around your steer tube that sits on the bearing, and then this top cap, well, it's not a top cap, but cover, I guess, yeah, cover cap piece that pushes in on it, and that like compresses the bearing. So these shims add a little bit of extra to this. However, these shims are totally round, and with this system, with the cables going through, it's like a C shape. So it's like, yeah, it goes around like 3/4, but then sort of leaves a gap open where the cables pass through. So I had to just cut these metal parts, but that was actually quite easy with with a normal tool, not like for cutting cables, but not by cables, but with like a flat, with flat cutters. That was quite easy to cut this, because this is so, yeah, these shims are so thin. So that worked okay, but I only noticed this as I put everything together. So what I should have done in hindsight is I shouldn't have cabled the handlebars, but I should have cut the steer tube so that I could put everything together. So of course cutting the steer tube was also, was something that I had to do before I could find that issue. Apart from that, there weren't really any big issues there. Like cutting the steer tube, that was fine. Installing the specialized expander plug, that was fine. That's a very a good product. That's also the product that they use on their 10,000 plus expensive bikes and so on. So that works also for this bike. And as I got these extra shims, I also got myself another top cap from Supercars, so it matched these caps on the back here of so it all matches. I guess the other thing that was difficult was that so as I was cabling the bike, I had also greased, of course, the bearing, so where the bearing sits, but also the outside of the bearing. Like I had put on quite a bit of grease on that to protect it from moist and so on, and to keep it running smoothly for a long time. But then as you put the cables through, they also get like greasy and so on. And I also used the cable dampening foam. So foam that sits here in the part inside of the frame, so it doesn't, like when a cable yeah, maybe it's loose or something, that it doesn't like make too much sound. But I noticed that foam, when putting it on the hydraulic brake hose, that was sort of like hard to put on, but then it stayed on as I put it in. While on the gear outers, it was easy to slide on, but it also was like shifting a bit as I put it on. It sort of, the foam kind of stayed in place, like it wanted to, like, yeah, it was touching the frame a little bit, and then it stayed in place. So I had to, yeah, like tear parts off so it wouldn't sit here. So I guess some of that foam didn't make it as far as I like, but I don't think there's any sound coming from that. So I guess the next time I would probably do that a little bit neater. Maybe I would put in the cables first and then do the, yeah, grease it up after the cables. Of course, then you maybe have a little bit less space, but still enough to like fully grease all the parts of the around the bearings and so on. Yeah, but that went, I mean, all in all, it went okay. It wasn't that hard, but it was, yeah, a little bit awkward or a little bit messy, I guess you could say. And then, yeah, that, I guess, yeah, so the hoods, yeah, like I said, that's Shimano again, everything super easy. If you follow the guides, yeah, like how to sort of set the reach and so on, and like when the, I guess, is it called reach? Yeah, like how like for big hands, for small hands, but also all the gears. So the front derailleur, back derailleur, following Shimano, that was easy. I did make a sort of reasonably big mistake when installing the rear derailleur. The thing is that so on the derailleur hanger here, you have a notch at the bottom. Let's see if we can focus on this. Yeah, and then so with the new system, you have this part here. Yeah, let's see. So this part here, and that has two notches, and the notch on the derailleur hanger from the frame fits perfectly inside of those two notches, and then they make a perfect line. Like they're like in the same direction. So I thought that was the way that it was supposed to do. I didn't actually look at it too closely, but then as I wanted to like put the chain on and I wanted to put the wheel out, I noticed I couldn't get the wheel past this wheel. So then I noticed something was off. So I looked again, and this needs to be at an angle. Yeah, it needs to like go like this. So yeah, once I noticed that. So it's just a little bit weird that that there's like two of those notches here on this side here that don't do anything except confuse you. But yeah, like indexing the gears, that was all fine. What I did was here, you might see this, that this barrel adjuster is actually the barrel adjuster of an old bike which had 105, but from 2001. So a 20-year-old group set, and this is a 20-year-old barrel adjuster. And I actually use this one because it's I've heard that the new barrel adjusters are a bit flimsy and so on. And this actually also has a larger range of adjustment. Like it has a larger, I guess, screw to move. And it's not flimsy at all. It might be half a gram heavier, however. So yeah, gears, that was fine. The setting up the front derailleur, again using all the steps from from the dealer's guides, that was perfectly okay. There's also like a special bolt that sits onto the frame, and you have to use a little plate to protect the frame. However, on this bike, I'm not sure if you can see it there. Yeah, you can see the bolt there. It's actually sitting on the plate itself, or on one of the bolts of the plate. So I didn't have to use the little protection plate to protect the frame, since it's sitting on the bolt there. And I guess the next thing would be the bottom bracket. So for the bottom bracket, since it's totally invisible, yeah, I have to explain it a bit. So it's a screw together system with two parts, kind of two cups, but that screw together in the middle. And I had to buy these special specific wrenches. They're not the normal bottom bracket size from Shimano or something. They're a bit bigger, and I guess the amount of notches and so on might not be the same. And I just bought two of them on AliExpress again, two different ones, maybe because I wanted to know if which one was the best one, and I didn't know if I needed just one or if I needed two for the two sides. But I also did face some trouble there. So the frame seems the correct size. If you watch Hambini's videos with bottom brackets and bottom bracket holes not being round, etc., that seemed to be okay. But as I just push them in just by hand, you just push them in as far as they go. They have like a little rubber ring. Zip. So to install it, I looked it up which product you should use. So All Cycles uses some like special product to make sure that there's no friction and water can't get through, some sort of rubber product. Some use just grease, but I like looked it up, and most manufacturers of these types of bottom brackets recommend some sort of assembly grease. So instead of using the smooth grease from the Shimano Derailleur smooth grease that I used on all moving parts, I used this assembly grease, which is a bit thicker, and it has a bottom bracket on the tube. So ceramic assembly grease. So it's specifically made for this, and it's also what the what the manufacturers say that you should use. So I use this both on the sides, but there's also like a rubber ring on the cups. I guess to take out any movement. So I push them in with my hands to get them as straight as possible, since it's kind of easy to not get them straight, and then they won't, the threads won't engage, of course, like if they're slightly off. So I pushed them in, and the threads were I think correct, like I sort of could feel it a bit. So I started pulling, started turning with my wrench, special wrench. I started pulling, and after a few turns, it sort of said, and I actually had only a little bit of engagement in the first few threads, and I think the first threads might be like thinner or something to sort of ease it in. And actually had when I pulled it out, and I had stripped the thread, actually the first few threads, so that was a bit of a problem, and just by hand I couldn't really push them any further. So what I ended up doing to get them deeper into the frame, so I could have like more engagement without any on the threads, without having any like force on it yet, was that I actually put my wrench on the bottom bracket and like moved it back and forth like this as I was pushing it in. So as I was just with just my hand, so I put the bike flat. I put the other side of the bottom bracket on a piece of wood, so it's nice and flat. And then just with the palm of my hand, normally like I could only get it this far, but as I wiggled it back and forth like with the wrench, just with the sideward motion, I could actually get it deep enough to have enough thread engagement that it wouldn't strip anymore. So then, yeah, with just the two sides, that worked okay, and yeah, they're nicely together. And the sort of first spin test, which of course I did, was like a little bit rough, but it's smooth. And I noticed now when the chain is not on, it's a lot smoother than it was, than the sort of first test. So I guess it's just like all the grease and so on was giving some friction there. But now it's pretty smooth, and it hasn't been making any sounds yet. Yeah, in all the rides that I did up until now, that's about 1,000 kilometers. So one last thing, I guess, is the Supercars Bar Tape. So initially I wasn't sure whether I was gonna wrap from the tops to the bottom or from the bottom to the top, since if you wrap from the top, you don't need this piece of tape here, and it can look very smooth. And for all the people that say that you'll get trouble and so on, and the tape will unravel or something, that's all bullshit. It works perfectly fine. I have it on multiple bikes from the shop like that. But actually this it doesn't look very nice with this bar tape, with the Supercars bar tape. It doesn't sit very flush, so I wrapped it from the bottom, and I like it up until here. It's if I'm on here, that's fine, since that's pretty wide anyway, and here it's nice and soft, and if you want to hold it like this, it's okay for your fingers not to have bar tape. But then the sort of, your hand sort of still rests on the soft part of the bar tape. So up until here is perfectly fine. And I think it still looks relatively neat with this small tape. And so this is the Supercars top cap here, which matches these caps here, as well. With that, I think I sort of have to answer one question in conclusion, and that is, should you build your own bike, or do I recommend that you build your own bike? And I think it's a double-edged blade, in the sense that I did enjoy it as a project. So that's the good side. So yes, in that sense I do recommend it. I think it's rewarding. I think you can then, the ins and outs of your bike. You can always fix 99% of the problems you'll be able to fix on your own. And it doesn't really, the extra tools that you need don't really cost that much more. So that's all good, but the backside is that it won't all go super smooth. Most of it did go really smooth, especially everything to do with Shimano, but there are very specific things that you'll have to either dive into, like which bottom bracket you need on that frame, and with this crankset, and so on, like details that you might not think about when you're setting on a bike build adventure for the first time. And also, as you get into building your bike, there will be some points where you'll get kind of stuck, and where you'll sort of need to either get an extra tool or something else, or an extra piece of product or something, or you just forgot to get something. The list of stuff that you need is quite long, so you will run into some little issues or major issues, and if that if that annoys you a lot, then maybe getting your bike built by by a local bike shop is the better option, or getting it from like a Canyon or something where it's totally assembled for you. That might be more rewarding and make you a happier person. But if you're like, if you enjoy making these things, then I do think it's a worthwhile, I guess, investment of your time to get into. I'm definitely happy I made my own bike, so that's my personal conclusion for you there. Okay, and with that I say goodbye. In my next video I will go over the full detailed price list of all the parts, and I will also go over all the nationalities of all the products, like where they come from, since we know the frame is Chinese, but there's like a whole bunch of international parts put together here on this bike. Alright, thank you for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed my nerdy rambling about bikes and all their little issues, and I hope to see you in some video in the future. So thanks for watching and see you. Bye.